and welcome to our Discovery Speaker Series. My name is Clarissa, and I am the Program and Volunteer Coordinator at the Puget Sound Estuarium. We run this program, Discovery Speaker Series, throughout the fall and winter. It's started out in person at the Estuarium or at the Lot Wet Center, but now we've gone virtual, where we offer more broader range to reach a broader range of people, so that we have oncoming guests who are either artists, scientists, educators, or community earth advocates to share their either research or projects with you, so that you have a better connection or learn more about our local environment. We've got two wonderful guests today. We've got Dana and Liz. I'll have them introduce themselves here.
Hi, I'm Dana Frankoff, director and producer of Voice Above Water, a short documentary about ocean preservation.
And I am Liz Schotman. I am the regional manager for Washington here for Surfrider Foundation, which is a nonprofit that does a lot to fight plastic pollution.
Fascinating topics. I can't wait to discuss this more with you all. But first, we're going to watch Dana's short award-winning documentary, Voice Above Water. Hopefully this works.
Tiang demen mula di tengah pasir. Ningohang bunyi ombak. Sing demen kamen kijau-kijau bin. Tiang dot gumi bersih pancara pidan. Nama kakek Iwayan Nyop, berumur 90 tahun. Dari 10 tahun baru belajar mancing. Peka cuma belajar mancing sendiri. Suka peka cuma di pantai saja, lihat keadaan di laut atau angin atau ombak. Lagi di pantai bagus, lihat sini ada pemandangan baik. Lihat di sana ada pandangan baik. Oh, begini airnya bagus. Coba-coba ke laut. Tiang uli bacang, ngai ter pedidi, ngai kaca pedidi. nepuk beliu tu lega. Ada takutang, bisa kakia takutang. Nah, ni pidan mancing tu liu ada kunitang. Lima semua bakat. Payu main bisik bapan jukung tiang nu cenik lagi kelom mau pahit payu bisik. Sekarang enggak ada kunita sebab plastik banyak. Wah, ini ikan ini. Oh, plastik. Marah. Jok. Buang lagi. Nah, mancing di atas. Nunang pancing. Malam megleduk ngedong. Amak plastik. Nunang bin plastik. Pasang gedong abu penaik plastik tu ke jukung. Abu ke daut dah ke pasir anu plastik tu tambunang di daut. Yang lain nepuk anak utang-utang plastik ke pasir. Isi nak wang mencemarkan pasir kata. The morning nyama Jawa teka Pak bang idih ni Pak ngah. Karabu tiang ke Jawa. Nah mak subuh makejang berjemak. Mapan itu ada pengolah ni pabrik ni perulang ni. Kamu buat mani lamun tak ada bin di pasir yang je nyemak abu ke daut. Pak nyemak abu mai. Abu kemu ke Jawa. Tiang dot pulau tiang pang kembali cara ini cuba.
Nama saya Men Lamu. Lahir saya bulan di sini. Umur saya tidak tahu bagaimana, saya tidak masuk. Yang ketemu pekak ring pasir. Nak gagain je ni kesai-sai kita duduk dulu, kadang-kadang mancing, kadang-kadang mesti nyaring ke nak penghidupan ni ke sehari-hari ni ke. Tenglah pekerjaan api balik. Uli gas kenton, gas bumi gas tok ni ke ampun tiang anten. Udang tahun ni ke tenuningin tiang.
Kak kan agama Hindu. Betara beruna dari segala syukur dengan teman-teman diajak mancing sudah mati. Pekak sendiri saja tinggal. Jadi tak ada dekat, tak ada plastik ni. Takut kak kamen plastik ni. Tahu urung lah kan hasil akan benyah. Amah plastik ni sing duduk. Cucu pekak sudah supaya ikut gotong royong. Biar orang lain di Indonesia supaya ikut bersatu gotong royong. Kalau laut ini rusak, pekak marah. Itu pekak sukar. Kalau sudah mati, ya mati. Ini gotong royong, sana ndak gotong royong, ngambil bisa lagi kemari.
Wow, what a beautiful film with a really heartfelt message that needs to get across that soon plastic will cover the ocean and ruin it. It's a statement you don't want to take to heart, but you got to. So wonderful film, Dana. We now can open the floor if anyone has any questions about the film for Dana. You can type those in the comments and we'll see them and answer them for you. To start off, I have a question, Dana. How do you find a 90-year-old Balinese man with such a great story to tell?
Yeah, I love it because every single Q&A, that's the first question, without a doubt. And it just means that we did our due diligence, showing him and his personality and his story and how lovable of a character he is. We found him because there's this organization called For Ocean who was hiring fishermen to go out into the ocean and collect plastic because they can no longer fish anymore. And so we knew that this was happening, and our DP did a location scout, found Wyon and one other gentleman and sent me their photos. And I knew when I saw Wyon that this was the guy. You could see the personality in his eyes, the wrinkles in his face had a story to tell. And without meeting him or even seeing video of him, I was like, that is our guy.
He was great. I'll have to say that. We have the questions coming in. Did you do any screenings of this film in Indonesia?
The only one we are going to, we are submitting it to film festivals that haven't opened back up yet in Indonesia. The only screening we've done so far is to show Wyon and his family, and they really enjoyed it. He laughed his whole way through, which I took as a good sign. I'm sure he doesn't have a TV, he doesn't watch the news, so I'm sure seeing himself and his story on TV and was quite a trip.
Blew his mind there.
Yeah.
How long were you in Bali filming?
This is a shocker answer to most people, but we were only filming for 2.5 days.
Wow.
That being said, the amount of planning that went into that 2.5 days was massive. And then fortunately, we were actually able to get everything during that time, except I did go back and get some voiceover audio with him. But yeah, pretty short compared to what it seems like in the film.
Yeah, it's impressive that you got so much good shots in 2 days.
Really great cameramen, and it was a really great team, and we hit the ground running.
Another one is, how has this experience changed your perspective of storytelling?
Good question, whoever wrote that one. It has shown me the power of storytelling. I knew that, but I now have experienced it. Voice Above Water has been it's my first documentary that I've directed, that I've ever worked on. And it's incredible the amount of people around the world that reach out to me daily that want to see it. So here I was making something that I was hoping, I could get my friends and family in a room to watch it, and maybe a couple film festivals. And it showed me how hungry people around the world are for a story that's kind of hopeful and about a topic that is so relative to every single individual around the world.
Yeah, I don't think that video would have been half as good if it was just facts. The fact that he was there telling his story, definitely, that's what drew us to it. That's why we wanted you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing the personal element to it is key.
Another question, with how scary plastic pollution is, how do you stay hopeful? What gives you hope?
I'm asked this a lot, and really, I feel like we don't have a choice. Really, the other alternative is to be sad and not do anything about it. So I try to wake up every morning and be like, I'm going to give it my due diligence to make this world as the best place it could be for us, for future generations. And otherwise, you're just kind of miserable. So I'm choosing happy and hopeful.
Yeah, I have a question for you as well. Do you remember a time when you realized how bad plastic pollution was, or was there some instance where I have to start advocating to reduce pollution in the ocean?
Yeah, I do. And it actually wasn't even in the ocean. I was on a trip in Africa doing some behind the scenes stuff, and driving around, I could not believe the amount of trash that was just scattered all over the side of the road and that people were just living amongst. And I was like, I don't think people realize what this is doing to our planet. If you choose to live like that, okay, but the long-term effects are just massive, and it hit me hard. And I was like, I need to come back from this trip and do something. And it turned into Voice Above Water.
Cool. Wow. Yeah, it takes going somewhere else to see a different perspective to really open up your eyes to those sorts of things.
For sure.
Does anyone else have any last burning questions for Dana? She's sadly got to go off to other business as well. So once all the questions for her stop coming in, we'll let her go and we'll bring back Liz to talk about Surfrider and how we can help locally to help reduce the pollution that we have here.
I would like to say one thing along the lines of that, because I'm such a big Surfrider fan, that the petition at the end of the film is the Break Free from Plastic Pollution petition. And I looked all over the world to find like a petition to add to the end of the film. And Surfrider is just doing such a good job with really pinpointing the issues and how people can help. So if you don't follow them already, and I'm sure you will after listening to Liz, but I 100% agree that like everyone should get involved.
One more question for you. Do you keep in touch with Wyan, and does he know the film has won so many awards now?
I know. Our crew who's still in Bali, they keep in touch with him. He doesn't yet know about the awards. I think we need to go out to his village again and have another conversation and let him know.
Yeah, 5 now, I think it is.
6.
6?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then does Wyan get paid for collecting the plastic? If so, is it enough for him to live off of?
He does not, unfortunately. And I don't think he really even cared to. He's really doing it because he's a fisherman and he went into the water and noticed that he can't find big fish to catch anymore. So he's just trying to fix that by bringing it back. And so it talks about how somebody walked by his pile of his collection that's literally behind his hut of all the plastic he's collected and said, hey, can I have this? I could take it to Java and make money. So there is somebody who's taking it to a recycling center for money, but Wyan is not making any money off of it.
Do you know who the man who took the plastic to Java was?
I don't. He just told us about him.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that we have for you. Thank you so much, Dana, for letting us share your movie and for answering any of our questions that we had.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I love what you guys are doing and stand for.
Okay, Liz, are you ready?
I'm ready. And I wanted to give a shout out to Dana just because she has offered to show this screening and field these kind of questions with Surfrider chapters all over the country, which takes a lot of her time and evenings up, I'm sure, and just being willing to share this film for chapters, for free off all her hard work and dedication to this issue. So definitely appreciate and want to give her a shout out for all she's doing as well. So
thank you so much. Again, I love Surfrider, so it's easy.
Have a good night, Dana.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
All right, I will try to share my screen now and we'll see how it goes. All right, is that coming through for everybody? It's looking good. All right, I'm gonna get to it. So yeah, I'm Liz Schotman. I am the Washington Regional Manager and I'm super stoked to be here. So thank you for the invite. And yeah, I'm gonna talk about some of the work my organization does to combat the global threat of plastic pollution and also kind of focus down on what we're doing locally as well. So kind of be a little bit of both. Let me see if my slides will advance. All right, for those of you who might not be familiar with Surfrider, we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean waves and beaches for all people. We were started back in 1984 by some surfers in response to coastal development that was threatening a popular surf break down in Malibu, I believe. But a side note, you do not have to be a surfer to join Surfrider. It's a common misconception, and I'm a horrible surfer, just don't tell anybody. Our vision is 100% protection of our coasts. And what that means is every mile of our coastline is stewarded by volunteers and scientists and recreational enthusiasts, policy people, all working together to keep our shores healthy, resilient, and beautiful. So our work kind of falls under these 5 key initiatives, which guide everything we do. So, and within these initiatives, we have established programs that I'll talk about. But the initiatives are ocean protection, coastal preservation, clean water, beach access, and of course, the infinite uphill battle to fight plastic pollution. Just a quick overview of sort of how we work. We have over 175 volunteer-run chapters and student clubs all over this country, as well as 7 international affiliates. And we have tens of thousands of members all working together on issues at the local, regional, and federal level, all guided by those 5 initiatives. And we kind of work through a couple different tactics, if you want to call them that. We try to work to advance policy, which is where a lot of the scalable change happens. And I'll discuss some of our big policy wins here in Washington State in a little bit. But we do lobbying on behalf of our ocean waves and beaches on local, state, and federal levels. We also work at a grassroots level to promote stewardship by connecting people to their beaches through cleanups, through water quality sampling, and other events. And that's one of the reasons that beach access is one of our key initiatives, because it's hard to connect to a place if you can't get to it. And of course, defending our coasts, which could be anything from planting dune grass to stopping offshore drilling from happening. And finally, we do a lot of leadership development. So we provide conferences and workshops and resources to equip our volunteers with the skills they need to do this important work, because they are the ones that are driving the change on the ground. So here in Washington, we have 5 volunteer-led chapters, Bellingham, Seattle, Tacoma, here in Olympia and the Olympic Peninsula. And we also have 3 chapters up in British Columbia as well, and a few student clubs in high schools and colleges and universities. And all of these chapters and clubs sort of pick and choose what issues and programs are important to them. And they have the freedom to choose, where they want to channel their efforts, so long as it's sort of guided by that overarching mission. We have several well-established national programs that chapters can choose to engage in. So under our Clean Water Initiative, we have Ocean Friendly Gardens and Blue Water Task Force, and then Rise Above Plastics, Beach Cleanups, and Ocean Friendly Restaurants kind of fall under that plastics initiative. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these programs. So Ocean Friendly Gardens is one where chapters work to install and maintain rain gardens. We don't currently have one in Washington right now, but if you're into rain gardens, hit me up because I'd love to get one going, because we have a lot of rain here in Western Washington, at least now, starting soon. And rain gardens do an awful lot to slow and filter stormwater runoff before it gets into our streams and waterways. Our Blue Water Task Force is a really cool community science water quality monitoring program. So this is where volunteers can collect water samples from beaches along the coast in Puget Sound. And they often collect them where agencies don't have the resources to monitor. So we kind of try to fill in the gaps where places like the Department of Ecology maybe doesn't have the staff or resources to sample those beaches. We have 4 of our chapters have one of these programs in place. They sample around, I think, 17 beaches in Washington. And we test for Enterococcus bacteria, which tells us if there's fecal contamination in the water coming in from somewhere. And most chapters partner with, local county health labs or the Department of Ecology, which is really great. And here in Olympia, we sample weekly throughout the summer at Priest Point Park and post those results on our website, which is listed here. It's bwtf@surfrider.org. And that's where you can go if you want to check out the results, as well as kind of explore our national database, which continues to grow every year. Nationally, we collect over 7,700 water quality samples every year. And here's just a screenshot of that interactive map, and you can see the locations everywhere from Hawaii to British Columbia to Puerto Rico. And I do want to point out that some of the pins are grayed out. Most of the green ones you see mean that the water quality is safe to recreate in. But the grayed out ones are often in the off season, because a lot of times agencies will sample in the summer when most sane people are playing in the water, but surfers and they're like, will often go into the water in the wintertime when I think it's way too cold. So they will often collect those sort of off-season samples to sort of, like I said, fill in the gaps so that we know the water is safe to play in. Moving on to plastics, which is the star of the show today. So Rise Above Plastics is kind of our catch-all program where we're working to change behaviors on an individual level through community engagement and public education. And chapters do a ton of outreach through tabling at cleanups, community events, festivals, things like that. Volunteers will often go into classrooms, present at like Rotary clubs and things. One of our volunteers actually went into the prisons a couple years ago and did a big presentation on plastics to the prison population there, which is a really cool experience. Many of them host screenings like the ones we just saw, and just do what they can to elevate this issue within their communities and encourage people to, take those small steps to reduce plastic use in their lives, because by doing so, we collectively drive down the demand for those products. And we really do try to focus on solutions. The goal is not to make any of you feel guilty about plastic that you use, but to encourage everyone, not just to make those small choices, but to recognize that those choices do add up to collective impact, and they force industry to kind of respond. We also do a lot of beach cleanups. It's something Surfrider is really well known for. They're one of the very visible things that we do, and they're super fun. If you have not been to one, highly encourage you check it out. Again, chapters often table at these events, so it's, to generate awareness about marine debris. So it's another great outreach tool that we have. It also just feels good to contribute to your community, get outside, you can meet like-minded people. Lots of good reasons to join a beach cleanup. And when we can, we collect data and we'll sort and count and weigh all the trash that we pick up. And that information gets entered into our beach cleanup database. So here's an image from that database of the top 10 items we removed from our beaches in 2020. And you can probably see a theme. What do most of these items have in common? They are food related. Single-use food items are consistently make up the top 10 items we find on our beach cleanups all over the world, and not just Surfrider, like other organizations that do this kind of work also find the same thing. I do want to point out number one here are cigarette butts. Remember that? We're going to come back to it. I will say that as much as I love cleanups, they are not a solution. We're not going to clean our way out of the plastic pollution crisis, although Wayan from Voice Above Water is doing his best, and I love him for it. But I can't think of a better example of the power of cleanups to raise awareness and inspire others. And so at Surfrider, our real goal is source reduction and like turning off that tap. But cleanups are a really valuable part of that effort, because a lot of that source reduction happens through policy change. And we use the data we collect at these cleanups to advocate for those policy changes. And a great example of that is our bag ban here in Washington State. So you can see plastic bags are number 3. They're usually in the top 3 or 5 every year. And this kind of information was critical in passing that bag ban, which, by the way, went into effect last Friday. So wash your reusables and bring them to the store, or you're going to get charged 8 cents a bag. So hopefully we'll see fewer bags on our cleanups going forward. Another good example is we passed another plastics bill, SB 5022, which addresses many of the products seen here, like including a ban on the styrofoam clamshells and cups and things. So data-driven policy change is one of the ways that we at Surfrider work towards that source reduction, but it's a really top-down approach, and we are a grassroots organization, getting back to our roots. So another way we get at source reduction is by working with industry sort of from the bottom up. And that's where the Ocean Friendly Restaurants come in. So this Ocean Friendly Restaurants is a certification program. It's offered through Surfrider, and it's sort of supported by our volunteers and staff. And it's basically a grassroots business approach for transitioning the restaurant industry away from disposable plastic foodware and towards more sustainable practices. So the program launched, I think, in just 2018, and we already have, I believe, over 700 restaurants nationwide. And they estimate that those restaurants serve about 200,000 plastic-free meals every day. Here in Washington, I think we have around 40 OFRs, give or take. And to be an OFR, you have to meet 7 mandatory criteria and at least 2 from a list of optional criteria. So it's things like you can't use styrofoam, you can't have disposable dishware for on-site dining. For takeout, it can't come in a plastic bag and with a whole bunch of disposable items you didn't ask for. And as of this year, you can no longer serve beverages in plastic bottles. And so that's one of the newer requirements, again, because we see plastic bottles as one of the top things we collect on our beach cleanup. So again, that data is helping inform what actions we should try to take on the ground. And there's also some other criteria like energy efficient appliances and offering like vegan and vegetarian options as well. All of that is sort of, ways that the industry can move and transition to be more sustainable. And this is our interactive map that shows you the names and locations of all of our ocean-friendly restaurants across the country. As well, if you click on the pins, you can also see the criteria that those ocean-friendly restaurants sort of adhere to be qualified. And I love this map because here in Olympia, I know what restaurants to go to and not have to worry about like getting styrofoam or a sack full of plastic forks. But when I travel, I don't always know that. And so using this, I can go to a restaurant in a strange town and know I'm not going to accidentally buy food in a styrofoam clamshell that's handed to me in a plastic bag that's full of plastic forks and knives, which will just live an eternity in my drawer of shame, along with all the other plastic foodware that I've accidentally acquired. I should make an art project out of it, really. Here in Olympia, we have, I think, 7 ocean-friendly restaurants. But if you know of a business owner that is interested in this kind of thing and would be interested in getting on board, then, by all means, talk to them. We have an amazing ocean-friendly restaurants coordinator, Christine, who may or may not be watching right now. I don't know. And she is always happy to meet with restaurant owners and sort of chat about the benefits of the program to the restaurant and some of the criteria and things like that. And I think they can go to surfrider.org and just sign themselves up at this point as well. Oh yeah, butts. Forget about the butts. All right. So remember how they were #1, and that's true, not in our hearts and minds though. But yeah, that's true on a global scale. Cigarette butts are the single most littered item on Earth, and they're made of plastic and they're full of toxic chemicals. They hurt wildlife, they degrade our water quality, and they're just really gross. So many chapters have a Hold On to Your Butts program in which they work to address the specific issue of cigarette butt litter in their communities. Some chapters enact local laws to like ban smoking in public parks or something like that. And others do more like education and awareness. Here in Olympia, we have a really cool partnership with the City of Olympia's Clean Team. I don't know if you've ever seen them walking around downtown, but they have blue jackets and they pick up trash and clean up graffiti and they're just awesome, just an awesome group of people. Can't recommend them enough. But we partner with them where we provide these really cool looking cigarette butt canisters, and they install and maintain them. We also have a monthly downtown butt pickup where we spend about just an hour wandering around the streets of downtown, grabbing butts as you do. We should have one more this month because we kind of stop in the winter because it's really wet and gross and cold. But who knows, maybe we'll keep it up this winter. But since we started doing these cleanups, I think just in like late 2019, we've collected over 17,000 cigarette butts just off a few blocks of downtown, essentially. And that's just a handful of people meeting maybe once a month and just roaming around for an hour. So not a huge effort, and we've collected 17,000 butts. It's pretty gross, but also great because those butts are not in our waterways now. And finally, I did want to mention our advocacy efforts. Every year, chapters do engage in like local, state, and federal legislative efforts, and we at Surfrider do everything we can to facilitate that civic engagement. We provide resources and trainings and opportunities to speak with their legislators. Here in Olympia, we're really fortunate because we're the capital city, and so we have a great opportunity to engage our legislators, especially during Environmental Lobby Day, where we bring in volunteers and we meet with our legislators and we talk about these kind of issues and why they're important to us and that we need action on them. Some of the recent wins include the bag ban that I mentioned, the plastics and littering bill, which we passed, and it's actually one of the strongest plastic bills in the nation, which is really cool. And we'll try to be carrying that momentum forward and keep pushing for stronger and stronger legislation on plastic pollution statewide. And then on a federal level, chapters all over the country participate in Ocean Hill Day, during which leaders from each chapter travel to DC to campaign on federal issues and lobby on behalf of our ocean waves and beaches. And I can put in a link because one of the big pieces of federal legislation that Dana was talking about is the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. So when I'm done talking, I can drop in a link on the chat, and we can share that has some resources and information if you're interested in that. But it's just a big federal bill to tackle all aspects of plastic pollution. And of course, we have local campaigns as well. So I know the Bellingham chapter just passed a local ordinance to ban styrofoam and a bunch of other cool stuff to tackle plastics, single-use plastics in their community. All right, so if everything I just rambled on about sounds awesome, it's because it is. And if you want to be part of that awesomeness, that's awesome. And there's a lot of ways you can get involved. The simplest and easiest way is to help is just to become a member. Memberships are pretty cheap. They cost $25 a year, and the funds go to directly supporting local chapters and staff. And those membership numbers are also really important drivers of change when working with policymakers, because the bigger the number, the harder they listen. You should definitely sign up for monthly newsletters to stay up to date on upcoming events. So olympia.surfrider.org, and you can scroll to the bottom, enter your email, and you'll get like a monthly update that's like, here's when the next cigarette butt pickup is going to be, and that kind of deal. Definitely join one of our cleanups. Again, they're not going to solve the plastic pollution crisis, but they do keep our beaches cleaner and safer for humans and wildlife. And they're also just a great way to meet like-minded and passionate folks. And any excuse to go to the beach is a good one, in my opinion. You can, of course, support local businesses putting in that effort to do the right thing. Ocean-friendly restaurants are one way, but there are lots of other businesses and organizations trying to do right by their communities. So vote with your dollar, buy less, buy local, and support those local organizations like the Estuarium that are trying to, fight the good fight and do right by, our environment and our communities. And of course, demand change from our leaders, whether that's, it could be legislators, but it could also be leaders in your community, in your organization, in your church, at school, at work. Every action has a reaction, and it's through these collective efforts that we can get to a tipping point where needless waste is no longer the norm. And I just dream of a day when like people who throw single-use things away are like, who is that person? That's so weird. I can't even fathom why someone would do that. Because right now it's normal. Lots of people do it. And so we need to denormalize that sort of mindless waste. And finally, I do want to add to just take care of yourself. Things like fighting plastic pollution and climate change are long uphill battles, and you don't do anyone any good if you burn yourself out. So be proactive about dealing with things like eco-anxiety. Don't doom scroll. Don't get trapped in the negativity of, the media of the world. Be gentle with yourself. None of us are going to change the world by living a single perfect plastic-free life, because we are all within an unsustainable system. So don't waste your time feeling guilty because you accidentally got your coffee in a styrofoam cup. There are bigger issues out there. So sure, strive for those incremental improvements. They do add up, but keep in mind that it's the system that needs to change. You are beautiful the way you are. And I know somebody mentioned this earlier, is like, how do you stay positive? And I love this quote. I use it all the time in my own personal life. I work with amazing and inspiring people in a really depressing field. Everything seems like, oh, this is the last straw. Plastic pollution is everywhere. Climate change is just this juggernaut that we can't stop collectively, it seems. There's so many issues we deal with that are massive, and it's very easy to feel hopeless, especially these days. So remember, doing something is better than doing nothing, and even small actions add up. You're not going to solve it. You're not going to be a one-man show unless you're like a superhero. Then like, please work on environmental issues if you have a superpower. But get involved, get inspired, and be the change. And that's all any of us can do. So with that, I will stop jabbering away and answer questions. So thank you.
Very wise words from Liz over here. Take care of yourself. It can be daunting for sure, knowing that, yeah, this past summer was hot, but it's probably one of the cooler ones we'll see in a long time now. But little actions.
Yep. We're nothing if not adaptable, us little humans. So keep that in mind.
Well, the questions have been coming in.
Oh, no.
Start off with, where have you seen the biggest impact of your work?
Oh gosh. to me, it's sort of twofold. It's like there's a top-down thing and a bottom-up thing. And so, from the bottom up, just inspiring, like watching volunteers like inspire their communities and like create that change on the ground level is always like hugely motivating and just kind of like chokes me up every time. But the top-down change is where a lot of that like really powerful, scalable change happens. And so when we pass big bills, like banning styrofoam in Washington State, or expanded polystyrene, I should say, and if we manage to pass the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, like those force society to change, to me, often in faster ways than sometimes can be done, from the ground up. Although that's not always true. Sometimes bureaucracy takes a long time and people can act a lot faster. So.
Yeah, I really like that ground up approach of look at how many plastic bags, look at how many of these cigarette butts. This is the issue. Now let's go back and tell those who produce it what they're doing and that something needs to happen.
Yeah. And I would say the biggest impact is changing the norms. That's what I love to see, because we just live in the society where we sort of take a lot for granted and we're like, this is the way things are. And that's not true. It's not the way things used to be. We lived this life for most of our existence on this earth without single-use plastics, and we can do it again. And so changing the narrative and the norms, so that it's just like our culture is like, nah, we're done with this. And that's to me where I think the big tipping points, come from.
Mm-hmm. We did have another question about that similar topic. Do you know why cigarette butts are made with non-plastic filters like they used to be, or why shouldn't we be campaigning on that?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I would love for a campaign to happen where we're like, hey, cigarette butt makers, maybe go back to cotton or some other like more sustainable fabric, or, what do you call it? Plant-based material. Because they used to be, I think, made out of cotton. And I sort of wonder if that's why so many people flick them on the ground. Like people who would normally not litter otherwise will still flick their butts on the ground. It's kind of like this weird gap where people just litter butts. And that's like, rampant all over the world. And so I don't know, honestly, why that isn't part of a bigger conversation, but you can reach out to me and
we can make it now.
I would love nothing more, because cigarette butts are gross, and I would love for them to not persist in our environment forever and ever.
Have you seen a increase in plastic use because of COVID?
Absolutely, absolutely, in a number of ways. Like obviously, like with our restaurants, they were hit really hard by the pandemic, and for our Ocean Friendly Restaurants program, we sort of, we sort of pulled back on our criteria and did everything we could to support them to try to avoid using single-use plastics. But at least at the beginning of the pandemic, when we weren't sure how it spread and things, like the default was like, it's safer. A lot of that narrative was kind of pushed, I think, by certain industry that stood to gain from like the idea that somehow single-use plastic bags were safer. They're not any safer. At the same time, the more important thing for us was like in our communities, we want our restaurants to survive. We want them to just keep doing whatever they need to do. So if they needed to use plastics during the pandemic to like keep afloat, then like that's priority number one. And then we'll get back to the plastic issue, post-pandemic when things normalize a little bit. But we definitely did see a huge increase because a lot of people are using takeout, and like there's not a lot of other options. I mean, there are, but a lot of places don't use them because unfortunately plastics tend to be the cheaper alternative right now, which hopefully
a quick, easy fix for what we all had to then figure out how to work around.
Yeah, we also had to add additional criteria to our cleanup data sheets. That was PPE, so the personal protective equipment. So because we're seeing so many more masks and gloves and COVID related things made of plastic, and so we changed our data sheets so that we could start capturing that data. And I know anecdotally, I see a mask on the ground almost every time I step outside.
That'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years how that, if we're consistent, if it hopefully drops off.
Hopefully.
Are you still able to host beach cleanups because of COVID-19?
We are now, you know, and I'm not a doctor, so please don't take what I say to heart as far as like what is medically recommended. But for the majority of the pandemic, we did not host group cleanups. We just encouraged people to do solo cleanups, which we still do. Like you can do a solo cleanup anytime you go for a walk in your neighborhood. And you can report that data to us as well if you're super into it, which I support. We do hold small outdoor cleanups at beaches now, and we just, you know, encourage people to wear masks and stay 6 feet or more away from each other. If you're out alone on the beach, like you can take your mask off and clean up trash. But when we have volunteers gathering in a place, we're, you know, doing the usual thing. But we are back to having in-person cleanups on a slightly more limited basis.
Do you know when that next one is?
I don't know if it's in the books, not a local one. If Christine's around, she might be able to plug it into the chat. But there will be a butt pickup in October. And then the next big like statewide cleanup, I believe, is going to be Washington Coastal Cleanup Day, which is in April, around Earth Day, but it's usually, yeah, I think it's maybe the 22nd. I don't know. And then we also have International Coastal Cleanup Day, which is usually in September. And then we'll also do usually a big beach cleanup on July 5th, because July 4th, we put a lot of plastic on our beaches. So those are the three sort of big cleanups. And then we'll also usually do one on International Surfing Day, which is usually in late June, and sometimes on like World Oceans Day, which I think is in April. I should have a calendar in front of me, I don't.
So there are lots of opportunities for people to get involved throughout the year. You just have to
sign up for the newsletter. Go to olympia.surfrider.org, and that's the best way. But you can also follow us on social media at Oly Surfrider, or just Olympia Surfrider on Facebook and Instagram.
If people wanted to help with the next upcoming butt pickup, that would also be on that website.
Yep. We'll post it on our newsletter, and then on Instagram and Facebook are usually our channels. And sometimes I'll get around to putting it on our website calendar, but not always.
Social media seems to be the easiest way for us all to reach out everyone. So if anyone has any last questions for Liz, type those out now. I've got one for you, same with the one I asked Dana. What was an instance that spoke to you that we need to clean up, we need to reduce our pollution?
Yeah, I mean, similar, like I've been very fortunate. I've been able to travel and just find trash in the random places. I used to do some research. I used to be a fisheries biologist, and I did some research in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And there's a tiny island that our field station was on called South Caicos. Not a lot of people, no industry, like no input, you know. And there was, on the windward side of the island, there was a beach, and we would basically go shopping there. It's like, oh, do you need a bucket? Oh, do you need to find new floats for the net? Like anything we needed, we'd be like, oh, just walk this beach. And it was so covered in trash that it was like, well, we'll be able to find whatever we need here, because there's that much trash. And again, that's not the island's trash, like that just all floated in. So Taco Time is not an ocean friendly restaurant, but I would love for them to be. And I will say, like, just because you're not certified by Surfrider as ocean friendly doesn't mean you're not practicing ocean friendly things. So I don't want to tell you to only go to your OFRs, and other restaurants are just doing the worst things ever. There are lots of restaurants that you know, don't offer plastic, that, you know, just haven't signed up. So you should peer pressure them to sign up.
Wise words from Liz over here, everyone. Whenever we got questions at the Estuarium about cleaning up the beaches, I always send them right over to Surfrider. They're the ones, they're doing their job. We love to educate, but if you want to get involved, Surfrider is the foundation for you. So thank you, Liz, for sharing all about Surfrider. So good to hear all the good things that is coming from your little organization there and all over the world now. That's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I love all the work you guys do at the Estuarium. I think all your educational efforts and outreach are so important. And I love all these events you put on. So thank you for all the work you guys do.
Thanks. So for the next Discovery Speaker Series, it will also be the first Thursday of the month. It will be in November 4th, I think is that first Thursday, and we'll have Linda Maps, who wrote Orca, Shared Waters, Shared Home, also the Seattle Times Hostile Waters series. So check that out. Get your coloring sheet. If you did color today, that little crab picture, make sure to take a picture and tag us at Puget Sound Estuarium. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.